All right, welcome everyone. My name is Sharon Kleindienst. I'm an admissions counselor here in the Office of Admissions at Dickinson College, and hope you've been enjoying the fall open house so far. I know it probably looks really different, and I'm sure you've heard that in almost every single session you sat in, that we are really missing welcoming all of you to campus. I was actually very fortunate. I was just on campus today. We had some in-person visits, and because we are currently open for in-person visits for a limited time, and it was great being in the Carlisle community. It was great being back on campus and just seeing the beauty of campus in the fall. And we were really missing having you all on campus right now, but this is a really fantastic session. I'm really excited for us to kind of talk a little bit about college in the time of COVID-19, really focusing in on student support and resources. And so I'm going to give another minute or two to let some more participants make their way in, but we really want to encourage you to use the Q&A option. So as you have questions, throughout the session, we want to encourage you that we're going to have about a 20-30 minute presentation. Our presenters have a lot of really great information prepared for all of you. And then there's going to be time for a Q&A at the end, and that's going to be the time to ask any and all of your questions. I'll be on the back end moderating, but Angie Harris and Dr. Missy Taylor are going to be really the great ones to answer your questions right off the bat with this really fantastic information, and then really get into the weeds of what it is that you want to know. And so looks like the waiting numbers have kind of died down at this point. So I want to go ahead and introduce our guest speakers. So if you missed the introduction right off the bat, my name is Sharon Kleindienst. I'm an admissions counselor here in the Office of Admissions. My role is to introduce our two amazing members of the Dickinson community. So Angie Harris, who's the Associate Vice President of Student Life here at Dickinson College, and Dr. Missy Taylor, who is a staff psychologist in the Wellness Center at Dickinson. So thank you so much to both of you for being here and showing up in your red and sporting our colors in any way that we can. Especially I have all like the beautiful fall red outside my window as well. And so I'm really excited for everything that you all have to share. Is there anything you'd like to say before we get started?
I think we'll jump in.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. I'll go ahead and turn my camera off so I'm not distracting, and feel free to share the screen whenever you're ready, Angie. And like I said, participants, we want to encourage you to use the Q&A to ask any of your questions.
Great. Thank you, Sharon, so much for getting us started today. We're really thrilled to be here this afternoon, and good for you all for coming to joining us on this Saturday afternoon through Zoom. Of course, we wish we were in person with you, as Sharon shared. But we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about how we're supporting students, how we typically support students, and also kind of what that looks like in the time at this semester and as a result of COVID. I think what the theme you'll see throughout is that we're really trying to do our best to provide the same resources. And so we look forward to sharing those with you today. All right, so this might be a review for you if you've been participating for the last day or so, but right now we are remote. It's no surprise. We're having classes held remotely. We do have about 170 students on campus right now for various reasons. Mostly just this was a better place for them to be, or for several of them, they've been on campus since we went remote last March. Because they're international students or just haven't been able to fly home. So that's who we have on campus currently. Students are being encouraged, students and employees are being encouraged to track their symptoms on a daily tracker. That's available to all students as well. But we're taking the safety measures that are being recommended by the CDC, and most importantly, practicing physical distancing and using face coverings and limiting our gatherings. So as Sharon said, we are having some visitors on campus, but it's pretty limited to admissions and athletics recruitment. And so outside of that, we aren't doing a lot on campus right now. But we encourage you to, if you can make it to campus, it's a beautiful time to visit. And you do have the option to either schedule a visit with admissions or even just walk around campus on your own. We have some great resources for doing a self-guided tour. So That's really how we're responding this fall. And I'll admit it's been really strange. I've been working in higher ed for the last 20 plus years, and this has just been, I've never seen such a change in the way that we responded to something in so quickly. So in the last 6 months, just how Dickinson has really shifted, and I think we've shifted well, right? And I think we've led and made hard decisions, but I think we've prioritized health and safety, and which is really what we're here to talk about today. And I think primarily when we talk about student support and student wellness from a kind of continuum perspective, I think that starts with student engagement. And we really hope that once students come to Dickinson, that you're really encouraged to find your place and find where what you can kind of lock into and be engaged with on campus. Sometimes students will get a little over involved, and so we really try to encourage students to find one or two things that are meaningful, that really that they enjoy, that maybe relieve stress, but also maybe drive their passions. That it's really important to find that outlet. Sometimes that's going to look different than what you're doing in high school, and sometimes that might. And we have so many opportunities, over 200 clubs and organizations for you to find something that's going to be different than probably you've ever had the opportunity to experience thus far. And if you're curious right now about some of the events and opportunities that our clubs and organizations facilitate, I've provided a link that you can go to now and look at what we do on campus. This is our Engaged platform, and at this link you're going to only see the events that are open to the public, and so you could actually join any of those events if something seems interesting to you. There's a lot, probably more, that prospective students can engage with now that we're in this virtual environment. So I encourage you to take advantage of that. And I know hopefully you're going to stay tuned to the next session, and I think you'll hear a little bit more about engagement within the academic environment, and I really just use that engagement and support hand in hand, because we find that being engaged really does help support your experience, and both in and out of the classroom. So I'm gonna keep moving on. In student life, so I'm the Associate Vice President of Student Life, and we focus on basically everything outside of the classroom in student life. And so here's a list of all of the offices. Hopefully you've had the opportunities to sit on some panels through this virtual open house and hear a little bit more about our student life opportunities. But I wanted to also help you think about all of these offices as resources for you, and resources for students in general, for not only the engagement piece, but also support. It's really central to what we do in student life. And so we're going to talk a lot today about the Wellness Center, but I wanted you to see the range of offices and support services and resources that we have, from coaches to our Department of Public Safety, who are sworn police officers, to the residential life staff that they support the entire residential experience and the four-year residential experience in totality. Our student leadership and campus engagement group, they work with all the clubs and organizations and campus recreation, Greek life. So I work in the dean's office, and that's kind of where I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about that in just a second. You're going to hear a lot about the Wellness Center. And then we have our Office for Equity and Inclusivity that supports our students, our Center for Race and Ethnicity, the Popal Shaw Center, our LGBTQ Services, Women and Gender Resource Center, and then spiritual life, including both spiritual and Jewish life. So that's basically what student life looks like, and hopefully that's a review for you if you've been on some other sessions this weekend. So a little bit more specifically about student support from the student life perspective. I chair what we refer to as our CARE team, and CARE stands for Coordination, Assessment, Response, and Education. And that's really what the group that really focuses on supporting students that might have some concerns while they're here on campus. We support students. We collaborate with offices and faculty across the college. And it's really important that we are working with academic affairs, your individual faculty, the wellness center, all the Department of Public Safety. We're really a broad reaching group to take a collaborative approach to student support. We work with students who might just have missed a few classes because they have the flu or have COVID right now, or up to higher level concerns that are really like maybe causing them to need to take some time off from college. So that it really runs the gamut of the things that we work with students on through the CARE team. Our mission, you see here, you see it outlined here, but really we're kind of the method for addressing student behaviors that can cause some distress. We assess the whole situation. That's the importance of the collaboration and looking at it from various areas across campus. And we really respond by balancing the individual with the community and thinking about that. The individual needs, but also the living in community, living on a residential campus, we have to also think about the greater campus community. And then we spend time educating the Dickinson community on ways that we can provide support and the resources available on campus. If you're curious about learning more about this support, you can find more at dickinson.edu/care. So I'm going to pass that over to Missy now and talk to you a little bit more specifically about the Wellness Center.
Thank you. So the Wellness Center is an integrated health center. So on the first floor of our building, we have health services, which covers a wide range of services, including like STI testing, general health exams, responding to feeling ill, treating something like colds, and we do flu testing, all of that, flu shots rather, and flu testing. We have a nutritionist who works on staff. She's also in health services. And then we also have counseling and psychiatry services. So we have a range of mental health providers, all with different backgrounds, but very generalist approach to therapy. We collaborate well with each other, but also with health services and nutrition services. So an example of that is a very supportive program that we have is eating disorder treatment team, where all three areas work together for a student who might have some issues related to an eating disorder. Currently, our hours are 8:30 to 4:30. Now, typically in pre-COVID days, we did have evening hours Monday through Thursday. With the counseling and psychiatry services, we would be open till 7 p.m. And then health services had 2 to 4 nights a week where they worked until 7. So lots of availability, no weekend hours. All services for anybody that comes to see us are confidential, and we don't charge for the services that we offer. I've worked at other institutions of higher ed, and typically there's some kind of collection of insurance and all that, and we don't do that. So since COVID, we've gone to almost completely virtual, and we've really beefed up all the wellness resources on our website and things that we do through the dreaded Zoom platform. We're very active there. And actually, Angie mentioned earlier the Engaged program. We're often listing our stuff in there. So we have all kinds of things that we've been doing virtually this semester to try to continue to operate as fully as we can in a virtual platform. So we're going to continue to use that platform moving into the spring semester, and we come up with new platforms all the time, such as we're going to do a program around dealing with the election and results of the election, because many college students are passionate about that currently. So what are we doing to kind of manage risk and keep students safe? All individuals wanting to be seen or to consult with somebody need to call ahead for appointments. You can't just walk in and say, hey, I want to see somebody for an upset stomach. That's different than before. We could do that. So calling ahead, you're going to get the typical COVID precautions where you get asked questions. You're going to get a temperature check. If on that phone call we know that you're sick, you're not going to use the same entrance as everybody else. We have you come in through a sick entrance to make sure that in case you are COVID positive, that you're not spreading infection to anybody else. A really neat feature that we do, and we're still doing it even with COVID, is open hours. And that is for counseling and psychiatric services. More specifically, any of the mental health clinicians are available between 11 and noon and 2 to 3, Monday through Friday. Now, in the past, if students just wanted to walk in, talk to a therapist, they could. They'd wait in the waiting room. We'd come get them within those hours. Again, because of COVID, we have you call ahead and talk with you over the phone. So we're continuing to do that even now. Another big program we have on the health services side is Testing Tuesdays, where you can be tested for STIs. Now there's a contactless version of STI testing and consultation that seems to be going very smoothly. In the past, during pre-COVID times, you would walk in and check in for your appointment on the computer, just like any other doctor's office. Again, to limit any kind of spread, we have you do that before you even get to the office. And once you're outside our doors, you call us, and then we let you in. So there's a lot of precursors to even getting in the building. So most of our interaction is virtually, and that also is by telephone. But for those students who are on campus, these are some of the precautions in place. The other thing, and Angie mentioned it, is all students and staff are screened for COVID symptoms. So contact tracing is a big thing that you might have heard about. We are very much following those guidelines, and we have staff, students track how they're feeling, just to keep everybody safe. We wash our hands a lot, use sanitizer. There's dispensers all over the place. And even when you're inside, we have you wear face coverings, and we wear them as well. So I kind of mentioned this earlier, but really, if you need to talk to someone, we can talk with you remotely, same day consultation with any of our staff. These are just brief meetings to kind of find out what you're concerned about. We may make recommendations, and we'll talk about possible treatment options. And sometimes, depending on where you live, that might be connecting you with someone in your community. If you're locally, we'll talk about what we can do here. So I mentioned earlier, we do things virtually. We're doing tons and tons of educational groups and workshops. So anything from like relaxation, deep breathing, that's a popular group, coping with COVID, anxiety management, things like that. And I think I said earlier, just getting appropriate treatment referrals there are lots and lots of online resources. And so because of COVID, I guess one good thing is we've had an opportunity to just beef up our web page, and we have support services and resources by topics or treatment needs. And there's a lot on our wellness webpage. And if you get onto the page, you can sift through stuff for health services, nutrition services, counseling, and psychiatry. It's pretty well laid out, and there's lots of links in there where you can click and go to other sites. So if students who are on campus, we do virtual health counseling and nutrition appointments. So just because you're on campus, we don't think that's necessarily the safest to come into the wellness center and do therapy with both of us sitting with face masks on. It's kind of uncomfortable to do therapy that way. So we're still doing telehealth or teletherapy, I call it, with clients. And honestly, clients are pretty okay with that for the most part. I think it was more of the counselors doing this new form of therapy. So we've really caught up with the 20th century in the last couple months and had to do so really quickly. So there was no break in services. We just kept on going to make sure students were getting what they need. There are times, like let's say someone's in crisis, they're suicidal, they're having a panic attack, something like that. We can meet with the student in person. It's we're gonna, compromise and do what's best for the student. Okay. Off campus is a little different. I mean, logistically, it's a bit more difficult. So we're going to continue to do those consultations by the phone or virtually to talk about, like, if a student is requesting therapy and we're in Pennsylvania, but they're in California, we know clinically the best thing to do is to find a provider in your community. And we also know that can be kind of hard to navigate if you've never done it yourself. So we walk you through that, help connect you with like crisis resources. And then, if you're in crisis, you've got someone locally that you can connect with nearby. So it's a win-win. So we do make treatment decisions on a case-by-case basis. But, there are some state laws that restrict who we can see outside of the state of Pennsylvania, and that's mandated by state law here in Pennsylvania. But that's a case-by-case decision, and that would be something a counselor would talk with you about. And when we can't meet with you virtually because of those restrictions, we're going to look on your behalf, look with you to try to connect you to someone who can work with you to help you through these things. I think that might be it. I think we're maybe at a point for Q&A. So
I think, I'll just jump in as folks are typing in their questions, hopefully in the Q&A function. I think in general, our students, much like probably you are, some of our students really like the remote course delivery, and some of our students really hate it. And so, and I'm sure that maybe some of you can relate to that. I think that, so we try to support them either way, right? We're looking forward to the time when we don't have to deliver classes remotely for sure. And we hope that's sooner rather than later. But like, hopefully, as you can see, we really have tried to provide the same resources to students, whether the small group that's on campus now, or whether they are half a world away, and literally could be in China taking classes right now. And so I have been working with students literally across the globe and helping support them through this time. And, it's the engagement piece, I think, is a little bit difficult. And I think that you all can relate to being in class all day and then adding your college search and getting on Zoom and learning about institutions. It's probably, you'd probably rather be doing something else than getting back on Zoom and doing. And so we do appreciate you being here today. But I think also, the Zoom fatigue is becoming a real thing. We see that with our students. And so we just, try to encourage them to find some balance and take care of themselves. We do the same thing when they're on campus, and then they're maybe too involved in their extracurricular activities. And so we always, it's finding a balance. And that's kind of our, we talk a lot about challenge and support. And so finding ways to challenge and support students and finding that balance. So let me stop sharing this because you probably don't need to see that. All right. Do we have any questions, Sharon?
We do. We have some conversation going on in the Q&A here, so please keep sending in your questions into the Q&A option. Our first question came in asking, how does Dickinson help students with neurodivergency, such as ADHD?
I'll field that one. So many, if not all, of our providers have worked with students with neurodiversity, not just ADHD. Students typically will come in having that diagnosis, having had some kind of treatment, whether it's medication and or therapy. The student meets with one of our providers. We evaluate every student to see what kind of resources they might need. It could be us. We could be working with other offices to connect them to accommodations for the classroom, sometimes housing accommodations. Like, as Angie mentioned, we're very well connected with looking at all areas of functioning. When someone even shows up on our door or in Angie's office, we look at the whole person. So we kind of advocate for the different resources and direct. But in-house, we work on learning ways to deal with that in college. If a student is on medication, oftentimes they provide us with like past testing data or reports from who they were working with. And if the student wants, we refer to the psychiatrist who can continue to prescribe the medication. And we also consult with past treatment providers from home so that, on breaks, like winter break, summer, there's a continuity between what's happening at school versus what's happening at home. So it's a warm handoff to all the different departments.
And I'll throw in that our Access and Disability Services Office is really an excellent resource when it comes to work. They work with all of our students. Well, if the students want, they work with many students with neuro diversity and really look to really take stigmas away from that on campus and do a lot of education for the just general campus community, but also will help with executive functioning coaching. Well, I probably shouldn't use the word coaching. They would probably not like me to use that word, but they definitely have resources and the strategies for organization. There's a SOAR. I always forget the acronym, and I shouldn't forget it, but strategies, organization, and academic resources, maybe. Yeah. I think that's what SOAR stands for. Yeah. But they are very closely connected to the Access and Disability Services Office. And so there's lots of resources with that office. I believe that if you're signed up for the next session, you might hear a little bit more about the supports that they provide in that office.
That's great. Yeah. And I was thinking about that as well. That would be a great session for everyone to continue to attend after this. And we have a follow-up question to that first one asking, how are we getting ready? Are we getting ready to get undergraduates back on campus? And what are some of those measures that we're taking as a community?
Sure, I'll take that one. We're spending a lot of time right now thinking through several scenarios, several possibilities. We want to make sure Dr. Ensign's very focused on health and safety as her primary priority, but things have improved on several fronts since the summer and since we had to make the decision to go fully remote, including our contact tracing in the area and our ability to access testing with fairly quick turnaround. And so those were two things that were working against us this summer. Those things have improved, but at the same time, the numbers in Cumberland County are going up. So we're looking at all of these variables. We're looking at what other colleges have done and how they have been successful or where they've kind of run into some pitfalls. And I think that, you know, we were one of the first liberal arts colleges to say we're going to be fully remote for the fall. And I really respect Dr. Ensign's choice and leadership in that area. And I think she's making the right call. It was tough. It was tough for our students who had heard that they would be here in June and then to get that switch. And so I know it's really on her mind to make sure that when we make an announcement, that it can be as, she can be as confident that it won't have to change as possible. Clearly, no one can see the future, right? So it's tough, but we are looking at housing scenarios. We're looking at the most challenging pieces for any college, not just Dickinson, but for any college to think about, especially residential colleges, are the ability to do testing, frequent testing, because that's kind of a gold standard. The ability for their students to eat and in their facilities, and then just thinking about the housing piece and how and whether and how students will live, whether they'll have roommates, whether they shouldn't have roommates, that kind of thing. So we're making all kinds of plans in the background. We're ready for anything. I do believe we'll have an announcement here shortly. And I know that many of you are paying attention to what we're doing. And I think what I'm just really proud to be at Dickinson and the thoughtful nature in which we've taken this and how we've approached it. I feel really good about the protection of health and safety and that priority in prioritizing health and safety of students, faculty, and staff. It's been a great, it confirms my decision to work here. So
I wholeheartedly would second that feeling. 100%. We're getting some more great questions, and one that really touches upon, for many of you who are in the room who are high school seniors and juniors, and wherever you are in your process, the challenges that have come with COVID-19 during this time. How is the college assisting with the students with dealing with the loss due to COVID-19, so like being engaged, involvement, community, etc. This has been a very mentally and physically, draining time. And so how is, as we're thinking forward, even currently, how has the college addressed that with students and assisted them through that change?
Sure. And, one of the things I think I'm going to take it in two different groups. For our returning students who had friends from campus, who had connections to faculty, I don't think this shift to remote has been as challenging, although some of them have been challenged by it, no doubt. I think, we all, including me, right? Everyone has been challenged by this pandemic. And so, but I think it was maybe marginally easier for our returning students because they felt already a connection to campus. And so some of the ways that they've been able to continue community have been by, renting a house with a few of their friends in a city that, they had wanted to live in, or at the beach or something like that. We've seen a lot of creative ways for them to be together in small groups popping up across the country. Or even just like roommates taking time to go, maybe they live with one family for part of the semester and then live with the other family a part of the semester. We've seen some creative things. And I would say that also extends to first years who have also been doing some of those things, but it's been a little bit more challenging because many of our first years that just started this fall don't have the same connection to campus because they've had to visit some of them didn't even get to have a visit because they were planning to visit for maybe an accepted students day that didn't happen. And so, but they chose Dickinson anyway. And so we really feel it's really important for us to honor that, right? And so one of the things we did this summer was we went ahead and assigned students roommates, even though they wouldn't be living on campus. And so I think for the first years, it's helpful. They're getting to know their roommate, and fingers crossed, maybe they'll get to live together in the spring. We really are hoping for that, and I know they are too. But so there's at least one person, and then they also have their floor of first years that they would have been living with. They have an RA that's try to help them get to know each other through this remote environment. I won't sugarcoat it. It hasn't been easy, but I think that we've provided things like that. Our virtual orientation process, assigning students orientation assistants who are upper class students. So really trying to find ways to connect the first years to upper class students. And then finally, it's really the community building effort has really moved to the classroom. And so our faculty have been excellent at building community within their classes. And so many of them are meeting synchronously. They have the chance to check in with their students, hear what's happening. Students are visiting their office hours, talking to them about their challenges. And so it's really, obviously it's been across the board. I focus mostly on student life efforts, but I don't want to shortchange our faculty because they've been working so incredibly hard at not just teaching their classes, but also helping to build community.
And I would add, the Wellness Center has a program that continues to be offered to first year students. It's FISH, FYSH, First Year Student Health. And it's where they can do a consultation with one of the staff from each of the 3 areas. So somebody who's a therapist and talk about what the Wellness Center does and how are things going. Here's what we have to offer you. Same thing happens with health services and then nutrition services. So it is a way to connect with the campus and feel like you're getting support from folks. And that hopefully, like Angie said, when we're back in the spring, fingers crossed, that they can come in and see us in person.
Yeah, thank you. And from many of the conversations I've had with students, funny you would say, Angie, that there are so many who are still finding ways to be connected. I just had a regional event with 2 students who went to school in Baltimore, but one's living out in Colorado with her roommate, and another is living in the Jersey Shore with 3 of her roommates there. And so that community, it comes in different ways, even with being virtual. And that's just such a, I don't know many other institutions where that's a common thing. And so great questions still coming in. We have another question that came in asking, we just sat in a recent alumni session and they talked about the personal connections with professors. Mm-hmm. So how is that being facilitated in an online learning environment?
Sure, I touched on that a little bit, but I think I've seen this firsthand. I have the opportunity to sing with the Dickinson College Choir, it's a class that's taught by Professor Amy Wodarski in music, and the time and energy and effort that she puts into this is a quarter credit course for students. So if you take it all 8 semesters, it ends up being 2 credits, which that's pretty great for singing in the choir. If you're a singer like me, but obviously I just join our students, and I've seen her, singing virtually is not an easy task right now. So she is working. She does not hear anything that's happening from the students they're singing at home. And singing along. You don't hear anything else that's going on. You're just kind of singing on your own. You hear her track. You hear the audio that's coming out of her computer. But the effort that she's put into it is amazing to create a choir. And so and then the students are submitting recordings, and then she is having them put together, and students are getting to hear the choir together. Right. And so that's the technical piece, right? That's the singing piece, but it's more about what I see her doing with building relationships with the students in the choir. She often takes time to do breakout rooms with students so they get to know different people in the choir. She's been very intentional about having the upper class students make sure they welcome the first year students in the choir. And so to see how she's doing this virtually has been pretty amazing. I feel lucky that I'm getting to witness one of our faculty and the effort they put into the experience. But, and I think she's not alone in the time that they're putting into making sure that the students are having the liberal arts experience in the classroom. I hear them often talking in our faculty meetings about and connecting with each other about how they can do this best. We had all summer they were in workshops and collaborating together to make sure that we went into this with the intent to provide the Dickinson experience virtually. And I don't think that I don't think that they would wish to do this forever. But I think they really have been able to connect with students. It's a two-way street, and I always encourage for those of you juniors and seniors, the relationship you will have with your faculty is a two-way street. You have to also participate in that, right? And so you'll get as much out of your relationships with your faculty as you put into them. But I can tell you that the Dickinson faculty are putting their heart and soul into their classes right now. They always do, but it's the effort they're taking right now and putting into it. It's pretty amazing.
There's a video that I always like sharing with students of, I think it's Professor Zwemmer, the professor of biology, that's on YouTube, where he's setting up like movie style lights and camera. Yeah. And he's talking about how like he wants students to feel like when they're watching Zoom that it's right in front of them. And he was saying in the video that there's like a 65-inch TV that he's going to have on the other side of the lab, so that when he's Zooming with students, he can see their reactions on time and like just as if they were in person. So if somebody is struggling, he can pick them out right there on the video and say, I can see you're looking confused. Well, let's talk a little bit more about that. And I think that's just such a great way that, Dickinson professors are still trying to make that intimate experience that's so common in the Dickinson classroom. And Missy, was there anything else that you wanted to add to that?
I can say from the wellness side of things, faculty are extremely caring about their students' well-being, and we get calls from them all the time, always have, but just to consult about a student or referring a student to come and talk with us. Again, through the ways we're doing it this semester, but they're very in tune with their students and what they need. And I think, to be a broken record, it's very much a collaborative environment across campus. Like, everybody really does look out for the student and try to get them every possible resource. And that might be the Wellness Center.
Yeah, that's great. So keep coming in with the great questions. I do have a question that I'd be happy to jump in and talk a little bit about the application process and, standardized testing. We know for many of you, and this is a great session to be talking about the stress and anxiety that's probably come in partnership with trying to get standardized testing, SAT, ACT. There is a session later on this afternoon at 5 p.m. with Mr. Greg Moyer, which will be closing remarks about admissions and financial aid. And he will definitely go into all in depth about this, but I can share with you that for this application cycle, for this year, we are test blind, really driven behind the process of we want to recognize that this is a huge source of stress and anxiety for students, especially in the application process. For many who have either had access, haven't been able to take it the number of times they originally planned and didn't get the scores they originally wanted, maybe had a really bad test day, or for many of our students who have zero access, it's been impossible for them to get testing. We are truly making this equitable across the board, so we will not be reviewing test scores at any point in the application process. I think that covers it. Angie, Misty, is there anything else that you'd like to add to that?
Nope, I think that's totally in your lane.
I'm glad I was here to answer it.
Yeah.
We want to encourage you, keep asking your questions, anything that's important to you in the process here. And I will share with you that the resources here at Dickinson are just, they continue to remain innovative, even as we've gone virtual. That connectedness, that sense of community is something that really can't be taken away from Dickinson, regardless of whether we're in person or virtual, wherever students are across the globe, you know, because we're such a global community, Dickinson remains connected across borders, across, you know, screens, either on either ends of the campus. So it looks like questions have kind of slowed down at this point. Angie, Missy, I'd like to go ahead and open up to both of you. You know, are there any other closing remarks, anything else that you'd like to share for the well-being of the group before we all head out?
I'll just close by, please feel free to reach out to me if there's anything that you'd like to ask that we didn't get to talk about today, or that you just weren't comfortable asking in this webinar type format. My email is harrisa@dickinson.edu, and I'm happy for you to reach out. I think also the same often comes, we do similar sessions to this in other formats and other for other audiences, and often there are questions for the Wellness Center staff that sometimes are that you don't want to talk about in a large group setting. And so I'll just give, how about Missy, we give the student wellness@dickinson.edu. You can email that account, and they can help you answer any of those questions, or maybe schedule a phone call that might be more helpful.
I've gone ahead and put both of those emails in the chat. So if you open up the chat, even though you can't chat back, you should be able to copy and paste those email addresses for your own reserves. So well, just want to say thank you to everyone so much for joining us this afternoon. Missy, is there anything else that you'd like to add before we head out?
I would just say thanks for being interested in, you know, wellness, whether that's mental health or physical health, or like being socially connected. They all go together. And like I said, I think we all want that for students and work hard to give them a really well-rounded experience.
Yeah. Well, thank you both so much for your time on this Saturday, and thank you so much for your perspectives and just these really genuine opportunity to really get to immerse ourselves into the wellness at Dickinson, into this such a vital part of the community. Thank you to everyone who joined us. Again, thank you for taking an interest in this conversation. Thank you for joining us on this Saturday. Want to encourage you, there's a couple more events coming on. We did mention the academic support event that's coming up at 4 o'clock, as well as the closing remarks at 5. So I want to encourage you to register and attend those. Thank you again so much for joining us. We want to wish you well, stay safe and stay well, and stay connected with us. We always want to hear from you. So thanks again for joining us, and we want to wish you well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.